Welcome to Beyond the Comfort Zone Live.
This is the show where we push leaders to step beyond their comfort zones, challenge their thinking, and accelerate their success.
I'm Aviva Lebo.
And I'm Renee Klein.
As Vistage chairs, we've seen firsthand how powerful it is when high caliber leaders come together to push beyond their limits.
Because no matter how much experience you have, you don't know what you don't know. When you're at the top, getting honest, unbiased feedback is tough, and spotting your own blind spots is even tougher.
And that's where the magic of peer groups comes in. Our mastermind style groups aren't just about networking, they're about real collaboration, a space where leaders challenge each other, hold each other accountable, and unlock growth they never thought possible.
And that's what this show is about, too. Every episode, we explore ideas, challenges, and leadership breakthroughs to help you make smarter decisions and scale your impact.
So if you're ready to think differently, stretch your limits, and take your leadership to the next level,
Then you're in the right place. Let's go beyond the comfort zone.
our guest today is Steve Caton. Is that how you pronounce your last name, by the way?
I actually like that pronunciation. It sounds kind of gangster, but it's Caton is the way that
I
it's
know.
actually said. But I like Catone better.
I like the
Okay,
gangster
Steve
too.
Caton, we've got Steve here today joining us. Steve Caton. Steve Caton has spent 3 decades transforming emerging companies into market leaders, most notably driving Church Community Builder from boutique software provider to industry leader, culminating in a $70 million acquisition in 2019. Throughout his journey, Steve repeatedly witnessed brilliant founders trapped in sales roles instead of leading their companies to greatness. This insight led founding Altezza. Am I pronouncing that correctly at least?
Yep, you got that. Yep.
In 2020, pioneering a revolutionary approach, liberating entrepreneurs through fractional sales execution. Today, Steve helps growth stage companies break through revenue barriers while giving founders the freedom to focus on building extraordinary businesses. When he's not revolutionizing sales strategies, you'll find Steve traveling with his wife Tara, smoking mouth-watering barbecue to lure his adult children home for dinner. Ooh. Or
Yes.
cheering on his beloved Georgia Bulldogs.
Go dogs.
Yeah, I just did that this weekend. That was awesome.
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, without further ado, we'd love to welcome you to the show. Steve, thank you so much for being on Beyond the Comfort Zone today.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it. I think the conversation that we have fits perfectly with the title of Beyond the Comfort Zone because the what we're going to talk about is a comfort zone that's a lot of times hard to escape for a lot of founders. So I'm looking forward to it.
It is actually one of the reasons I was super excited to bring you because I have watched this time and time again where founders get trapped in sales. They
Yeah.
don't know how to find themselves out of it, and it's the barrier to scale. And since we're working with driven leaders who really want to scale their companies and build something, it's usually one of the things that holds them back most. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it more times than I can count.
Steve, I'm curious, what are the signs to look for in your business that suggest it's time to hire a salesperson? Would love to know the leading and lagging indicators.
Yeah, that's a great question, Renee. I think, talking about the signs that the business is ready is really important because as founders, we mentally can be ready much quicker than maybe our business is ready. So we see kind of both ends of the spectrum, right? Some founders really have a hard time letting go of sales because they love it. Others can't wait to get out of the sales seat, and so they're looking to hire salespeople. And if you hire a salesperson too soon, that can be a massive financial mistake. If you hire them at just the right time, it can be a massive accelerant. So yeah, that's why that's such a great question. But when I think of leading indicators, just talk about, I'll kind of break it down in terms of what does it look like and what does it feel like, because this will resonate, with founders who might be sitting in that spot going, oh, I feel this. This feels familiar to me. But in terms of what it looks like, think in terms of a lot of multitasking from the founder. So when you have a founder that's just doing a lot of things, and they're not able to really find that kind of sweet spot for focus, that's typically a sign that the business is ready for some help. It might not be sales help, right? It might be other kinds of help, but clearly the founder needs some help, needs some relief so that they can focus. Because when we start our business as a founder, we're not really trying to be consumed by the business. We're looking to be a strategic leader of that business. And so if multitasking is taking us away from that, that's a sign that something's going on that we need to pay attention to. Getting a little bit more closer to the sales specifics, if you see yourself as a founder not being able to get to the revenue generating activities that you need to do, so there's a reduction in the amount of time on your calendar for revenue producing meetings, that's a major sign. That could mean that there's some people that don't like that. Like they don't like talking to people, which is the craziest thing to me. But most of the time when we see that happen, it's because they're just being distracted by all these other activities. And so the revenue generating activities are getting crowded out by other priorities. So that's another thing to look at. And then as we get even closer to kind of sales process, if you see deals or sales opportunities that are getting stuck either early in the sales process or late in the sales process, that typically points to a couple of things that could be happening. One is if it's early, it's basically lack of follow-up, right? So founder is again consumed, busy, doesn't have time to chase deals down. So if they can close something that's right in front of them, no problem. If someone's ready to sign a contract today, I can close that in my sleep. But if I got to chase them down, if I got to nurture it, if I got to talk to different stakeholders, it's like good luck fitting that into my calendar. So those deals are going to get stuck early in the sales process. And then the ones that are getting stuck late, like in that proposal stage, is typically happening because I rushed through the process. I sent a proposal as part of my sales process, but they weren't really ready for a proposal. And so I didn't really take the time to establish value. I missed some critical decision process detail. And so now the deal's just sitting there and I'm going, why won't they sign? Why won't they respond? Why are they ghosting me? So those are some of the those are some really tangible leading indicators. And all of that rolls up to something that feels a lot like anxiety and stress, right? Because if we're not getting deals closed, we're seeing revenue starting to, either flatten out or decline. That's a pretty stressful time for a founder.
Um, so you talk about kind of the indicators.
Yeah.
Um, why do you think the first hire is so hard?
Yeah, the first hire is absolutely the hardest one to make. And here's why. Because when you think about where's our business from a maturity standpoint, if we are at that point where we're making the first hire, many times the sales has really rested on us as the founder. And so we've built all of the processes and the systems and the strategies and the messaging for us, but many times it's not documented. And it's not really solidified, right? So it lives in our head, but
Mhm.
it's not living in systems. It's not living in documented processes. And so if I am a salesperson and I am being considered to come into a company and help them grow, the things that I'm looking for basically are how do I know I'm going to make money doing this? Like how do I know I'm going to be successful? If I'm not experienced as a salesperson, then I might just take it, right? I don't care. I don't know enough to care. But if I've been in sales for a long time, I'm looking at, okay, what's the infrastructure that's here to support a salesperson? What's the go-to-market strategy look like? Is it mature? Is it tested? Or is it still very much in kind of wet cement mode? What's the lead generation look like? Is there a consistent flow of leads, or is this all going to fall on me to do the lead gen? Is the messaging tightened up? Do we really know who our ideal client profile is? So these are all things that experienced salespeople look for, and if they don't see that, then what it says to them is it's going to be really hard for me to make money here. I might make my base salary, but getting variable compensation is going to be really difficult. So I think I'm going to move on. So it really makes it hard for a fledgling company like that to attract top talent. And so typically what happens is you're left to choose from people who lack experience or people who lack effectiveness, and neither one of those are going to really.
Oh,
Does
you
that
cut
make
out at
sense?
the end.
What's that?
You cut out at the end. It said neither one of those, and then you cut out on my end.
Yeah, I was just saying either one of those are going to work out too well. And I'm sure you guys know the statistics on how frequently sales hires don't work out. It's really high, over
Mhm.
50%. So again, that's like I don't want to roll the dice, with inexperienced salesperson. If I'm the founder, I want to find someone who's got experience. And again, that experienced salesperson is going to be looking for things that may not be present in my business yet.
So just following up on that a little bit before we move on. If that's the case, um, what do you suggest a founder do to get ready for that next, or to the, not even the next hire, that first hire, so that they
Yeah.
can attract top talent?
Yeah, I think the key is awareness and understanding of that principle that it's not just people, it's not just a salesperson that's going to help me be successful. It is a combination of strategy, process, and people all working together. So it's really, I think the first step is let's build the infrastructure. Let's figure out how to build that infrastructure and get all those things I rattled off, get those in place, get them documented so that I literally, as a founder, when I bring that salesperson in, I've got a system I can walk them through. I've got scripts I can walk them through. All that's been developed and it's living in documentation that's either printed or online or whatever. You need to build that infrastructure. I've always we talk a lot about this at Altezza, the work that we do. We'll bring in a sales leader, like a VP of sales type of a role, to do some of that upfront work and assess what's here. To work with before we actually plug in a salesperson to go execute, because you got to deal with the I call it the platform, right? Let's build the platform, make sure there's at least a minimally viable sales platform, and then once that's there, we can plug the person in. So I think it's just an awareness that I need to make sure I have something there before I just go hire a person and expect them to figure it out.
Okay.
Steve, I have a question for you. A lot of owners, founders, it's their baby and it's hard to relinquish control. What are the qualities you've seen, especially when you're hiring some of the first hire? We're going to stay there for a minute. What are the qualities you see in really successful additions to the team from the sales perspective?
Yeah, so you qualities in the founder or in the
The
salesperson?
salesperson.
In the salesperson. Yeah, I think, there is, I wrote a whole article on this that's on our blog about what makes for successful salespeople. I think the first thing I will say is experience. So because with sales, there's really no substitute for experience. If you think of the whole kind of Malcolm Gladwell's outliers and the 10,000 repetitions, that plays true in sales as well, right? It's like I can take an experienced salesperson who's been doing it for years and I can teach them how to sell something different pretty quickly. But taking someone who's not sold for a long time and teaching them how to sell and all the nuances of that just takes time. You got to have the at bats. So the first thing I look for is experience. And then you might be surprised to hear me say this, because a lot of people would go to industry next, like do they have vertical experience? And in my experience, here's what I've learned is that core value and culture fit matters way more than industry fit, right? I've had too many, I can tell too many stories about people that were incredible salespeople, but no one liked them and they were just a pain in the butt to be around. And they really created almost like a cancer in the culture of the organization. And man, that is incredibly damaging. We don't want to do that. So I would say core value and culture fit would be the next thing to look at. And then you want to look at, do they have vertical, and does it matter for them to have subject matter expertise? Like I said before, good salespeople can learn to sell new things pretty quickly. There are some verticals that are like so specialized, like for instance selling to the government, right? Like, or selling to nonprofit organizations. That's a really unique sales motion. So probably having somebody who has some experience is going to matter there. And then the last thing I would say is sales philosophy, does their approach to selling match you and your company? And like you said, Renee, it's my baby. I've built this brand. This brand that I've built has an identity. I want someone who's going to represent that faithfully, not completely change it because their personality and their approach to selling doesn't match with how we've done it up until now. So that would be the last thing I would look at. All of those things are really important, though.
Really helpful.
I want to dive into that a little bit further though, because it is the person's baby, right?
Yeah,
And that doesn't mean they're selling it the right way. They're passionate about it and they're the founder. So usually they have unique capabilities to sell just because of who they are, right? But when it
yeah,
comes to the first salesperson, um, they're not going to be able to sell like the founder. They're not the founder. They don't have that uniqueness.
that's right.
So I'm curious, how you coach founders when they're bringing the first salesperson on or even the first salesperson, how to solve for that because the messaging, the scripts, they can't run the same things the founder just did. It's got
Yeah.
to be different.
Yeah, 100% agree. So there's some layers to this conversation, right? So I think the first thing I'll just speak for myself. Okay. I had to, when I made this move for my own company, I had to get comfortable with the fact that whoever I bring in isn't going to be as good as I am, but that's okay because even if they're 75 or 80% as good as I am, if it frees me up to go do these things I really need to be doing that I can't do, then
Mhm.
it's worth it, right? There's a mindset shift that has to happen for that owner to just get comfortable with that. Because it's true. No one's going to be able to sell as good as I can, but again, if I'm freed up to do more strategic things, it's worth the trade. Now, the second piece of it, the second layer is the art of delegation and training, right? So we help owners understand here's how you train that salesperson. So there has to be this sequenced kind of experience where they're doing things together for a while. And, the new salesperson's watching the founder do it and then shadowing, and then eventually there's a little bit of a baton pass where over time it's the salesperson doing it and the founder coaching and mentoring, and then eventually the salesperson will be able to fly solo but still pull that founder in as a subject matter expert when they encounter a conversation that's a little bit more complex, right? And but over time eventually that salesperson will get to the point where they can fly completely solo without the founder. But what we have to remember as a founder is that's not going to happen in 30 days, people. It takes some time. And if you take the time to do it, it's the whole, mantra of, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. If you take your time, you do it right, man, the payoff is going to be great. But there's no quick fix.
I'm curious though on that because I see this, right? So you've got that founder, and you're saying bring in somebody who's experienced, and experienced salespeople often have, the methodologies that have worked for them over and over.
Yeah.
Like, how do you create that open-mindedness between the two that there might be a better way, to be able to have that discussion when it is the founder's baby?
Yeah, I think that goes to core value fit, right? That's where you get into the core value piece and the cultural piece. So one of the things, for instance, that we look for in people that are selling for Altezza, we use a tool called Predictive Index to help kind of assess their readiness to be a fractional salesperson because it's very different than being a full-time salesperson, and then being a fit with the companies that we serve. And one of the things we look at is teachability and flexibility, right? And independence, right? So if you see somebody that's like way out there on the independent spectrum, they basically are the kind of person they're like, hey, just leave me the heck alone. I know what I'm doing and I'll get it figured out. So we don't want people that are too independent, right? But you got to have some independence if you're a salesperson. So somewhere in that spectrum is going to be the right fit. And so that's why I think assessing and analyzing for values fit is really important.
Steve, it might be hard to say, but on average, from what you've seen, what are some expectations in terms of performance that owners can expect when they bring someone in?
Yeah, I think this is where, gosh, so going back to the whole infrastructure piece we were talking about before, there's so much that has to live there to help us understand what we can expect. So if I don't know, for instance, if I have no data on how many leads I get, how many of those leads do I convert, how long does it take to convert those leads, what's the dollar amount of those action, those average sales, like if I don't know all that, or it's just sort of nebulous in my head, it's going to be really difficult to figure out what is the path to return on investment, right? So again, that's why that infrastructure piece matters. A lot of times, what we're dealing with, Renee, is those metrics are not fully established yet, right? Because the discipline of gathering the metrics hasn't been there, so we have to kind of start there, which is why I personally believe that the going with the fractional salesperson versus full time for that first salesperson is really a great idea, because when you don't know what your ROI pathway looks like, then don't go spend a full time salary on it and then be burning cash for 6, 12 months before you start to see a return. Do it more incrementally. Use a fractional salesperson to build that proof of concept and start gathering those metrics that help us understand, okay, if we do pour gas on this, here's what it could look like.
Mhm.
But just industry standards, Renee, if you look at just full-time salespeople across the board, it typically is 10 to 12 months before they pay for themselves.
Wow.
In our model at Altezza, we've cut that in half.
Wow.
Can you tell us a little bit about your model? It's unique, which is one of the reasons we wanted to bring you on here. So,
Yeah, essentially it's really simple, but simple in theory and harder in execution. But we're bringing these experienced salespeople who've been doing sales for a long time into businesses where the founder is ready to step out of that sales motion and is struggling to hire that first salesperson. We bring them in part-time, so anywhere from as low as 8 hours a week to as many as 15 hours a week, right? And all they do is sell. So they're simply not distracted by anything. They're just there to do sales activity exclusively. And in our model, it's almost always closing. It's the closing part of it, which is typically the most time consuming. If you think about the nurturing and the follow up and all the things that happen to get a deal across the finish line, that's what our people are really good at. So we're matching salespeople up with businesses, and then helping that founder go back to being that strategic leader that they wanted to be when they started the business.
when you're doing that, is it usually that's the first hire ends up being a fractional person, or do you see sometimes in work with teams where you're expanding with multiple fractional people as they're starting to grow versus?
That's a great question. So when I first started the company, and we've been doing this about 5 years now, it was exclusively founders hiring the first salesperson. And then it started to evolve from there into, okay, because when I started the company, I kind of thought we'd just be a really nice bridge. Let me build the bridge to get that founder from zero to one, zero to their first full-time salesperson. And then once we got them there, we could just pass the baton to that first full-time salesperson and make it really smooth. Well, we've done that, but then we've had several business owners who just said, "Hey, I like the idea of not having full-time salespeople. Can we just get more fractionals?" And so we've done that as well. And then what we've started to see more recently is where existing companies with sales teams are saying, let's use the fractional model to do proof of concept on a new product or service or a new territory. Again, bullets before cannonballs. Let's test it, make sure it's going to work before we go spend all that money on full-time sales hires.
Interesting. So,
Steve, if someone that, listens to this recording was interested in working with you, what's the process? What would that look like?
Yeah, we've created three different pathways, Renee, that have been basically tried and true and tested through failure, which is how this goes a lot of times, right? You try things, they work, they don't work, you learn, you apply. So what we've learned, going back again to the infrastructure piece, is we've got to have different pathways that align up with where the business is from an infrastructure standpoint. So for a company that basically like the last one I mentioned, that's existing mature company with full sales infrastructure, they're just looking for us to do proof of concept. We have basically what amounts to a DIY or do it yourself pathway. We have our matching process using predictive index to make sure we're giving them the right person. And then it's just, here you go. And they take off and they go. So they don't really need a lot of assistance from us other than the matching piece.
Mhm.
On the other end of the spectrum is a business that basically doesn't have any infrastructure at all, or what they have is very little, or just lives up here, right in the founder's head. And so for those companies, we have a done for you pathway where we bring in a fractional sales leader who builds all that go to market strategy, systems, processes, and infrastructure. And then when they're ready for salespeople, we give them one or more salespeople, and then that sales leader will then lead the salespeople. So the owner's fully like out of it, right? They get to just go do something else, and they've got a sales leader and a sales team working for them. And then in between is a done with you that kind of blends. It's a little hybrid. So we do a little bit of help on the front end for about 90 days, getting that salesperson in the groove as quickly as possible. And then typically the owner's on their own after that.
Interesting. Um,
Yeah.
well, we'll put your contact info for in chat so that if anybody wants to contact Steve to learn more about what it's like to have fractional salespeople. I know we hear all the time talking about fractional sales leadership, but this is new, talking about actual fractional salespeople. So I love the concept.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I do have one more question for you that we ask all of our guests.
Uh-oh. The surprise question. Yay.
The surprise question, you wouldn't be on Beyond the Comfort Zone without it. So, what is something that is outside your comfort zone that you've never done but would like to try?
Oh, skydiving.
Do you know that is in all the years I have done the podcast, that is the most common answer I get?
I don't, it doesn't surprise me because I talked to a lot of people who want to do it, but are afraid to. And
Well,
I'm
I've
one of
done it a couple of times. If you ever want to do it, I'd be glad to take you.
them. Oh, awesome. Renee, have you done it too?
No way. I like to hear all about it, but no, no. I need to go. Snorkeling I can do, but scuba diving would be my thing. I'm very afraid of it. So
Awesome.
Well, it's been truly a pleasure to have you as a guest here today. Thank you to everyone who joined us as guests. And until next time on Beyond the Comfort Zone, we encourage all of our viewers to try something new, to get outside your comfort zone, because that's where growth occurs and life begins. Have a great day, everyone.